Welcome back, everybody. It's day 2 of summarizing for 3rd grade, 3.6F. I'm happy to be back with you and excited to get started on some more summarizing activities. So we are going to go back to our PowerPoint that we were talking about yesterday, and we're going to start working on picking out that most important information. So the first thing we want to talk about is our objective for today. Our objective is I can identify the most important parts of a nonfiction text using a graphic organizer. So we are going to be doing just that. We're going to be identifying the most important parts of a text. So let's get started. Remember, we were using this PowerPoint yesterday and we left off on this part. And now we are going to go ahead and start right back here. All right. So what makes a good summary? Let's remind ourselves what we need to do to have a good summary. The first thing is to include only the important ideas, which is what we're really going to work on today, to put ideas into our own words. That means that we're not just copying and pasting, we are writing out our own words, our own thoughts from our brain. And leave out little details and repeated information. So those unimportant things like the color of their shirt or, what they ate for breakfast, those probably aren't the most important details. So you want to leave those out when you're writing your summary. And then use the text structure of the text, which we're going to talk about again. Remember, that's like cause and effect or compare contrast. So we'll get to that. First, including important ideas from the text. This is easy to say, but it can be difficult to decide what are the most important things. Okay, so we need to think about what the author wants us to know. So here is the passage that we were talking about, and we are going to read this, and then we are going to decide what is the most important information. So I'll read it to you, starting right here with many. Many butterflies depend on certain plants to survive. As adults, butterflies drink nectar, but caterpillars eat leaves. Some caterpillars only eat the leaves of specific plants. Monarch caterpillars, for example, eat only milkweed. If butterflies cannot find the food source they need for their eggs, the next generation will not survive. When habitats are changed, such as when the wetlands are drained or forests are cleared, butterfly populations may drop dramatically. According to the Xerces Society, an invertebrate conservation group, over 50 kinds of U.S. butterflies are at risk. And what they mean by at risk is they're close to being extinct or they're close to being endangered. Their habitats are being destroyed, so they're dying. Okay, so what ideas are most important in this text? Even though you might have some personal connection or something in here might grab your attention, you need to think about what's important to the writer, the person who's writing this. So look for a topic sentence or a main idea, so that will kind of help you get started. So in here, the things that we have changed to the white are the most important things. The author really wants you to know that many butterflies depend on certain plants to survive. That's very important. And then also that some caterpillars only eat leaves of specific plants. So butterflies and caterpillars really rely on their food source to survive. And they only eat a certain type. So if that plant dies, then they don't have any food. Then also, if butterflies cannot find a food source they need for their eggs, the next generation will not survive, which means that those butterflies are going to die, but also their babies won't be able to survive because they won't have the food that they need. And then the last important thing is that 50 kinds of U.S. butterflies are at risk. So this author really wants to point out the fact that it's really important that we preserve the plants that butterflies and caterpillars eat so that they can continue to survive and their babies can continue to survive, so that those 50 types of butterflies no longer are at risk. Okay, those are the important things. So you really want to pull those things out. Yes, is it cool that they drink nectar and that caterpillars eat leaves? Sure. And is it an interesting fact that monarch butterflies eat milkweed? Sure. But it's not the most important ideas. Okay, so once we do that, the next thing that we're going to do is, well, we're going to move on to putting it into your own words. But just a reminder, finding important ideas, the strategies that you're going to use here are things like finding the main idea and looking for the big pictures and topic sentences in your paragraphs. Okay. And we've talked about before why summarizing is important, but why do you think that summarizing is important? Think about that for a second. Well, one reason that it's important is because summarizing helps you understand what you're reading. It helps you to think about what you've read and decide what's important. Okay, so now we're moving on to putting it into your own words. All right, so putting into your own words, we have a fancy word that we call this, and it's called paraphrasing. Okay, so instead of just copying down exactly what the author wrote, you need to use your own words. That doesn't mean you change the meaning. For example, if the author said the sky is blue, you can't say, the sky looks like the grass because it's green. Hey, you can't change the meaning. But if the author says there's fluffy white clouds with a clear blue sky, you might say something like, the sky is is turquoise and there are large clouds that are white. Okay? You use the same ideas, but you kind of put it into your own words. Okay, so let's try it. Okay, let's put this into your own words. Can you paraphrase or can you put this sentence into your own words? Many butterflies depend on certain plants to survive. So think for a second. How could you change that around but not change the meaning? So a hint is to try using synonyms, and those are words that mean the same thing. So now we have many butterflies depend on certain plants to survive. You can also change the order of the words. Okay, so butterflies, here's a paraphrase that you could use. Butterflies need specific plants to live. Right here it says many butterflies depend on certain plants to live. So depending on something means that you need it. Okay. And then certain, they use the word specific as a synonym. So many butterflies depend on certain plants to survive. That's the original. And a good paraphrase or a good way of putting that into your own words would be to say, butterflies need specific plants to live. Okay. Live and survive are synonyms there. There are some words that you can't change. For example, you can't change the word butterflies. You have to use that because that's what we're talking about here. Okay, because those are the important words from the passage. And right there, you can't change butterfly or caterpillar because those are the animals we're talking about. All right, moving on to number 3. Leave out little details and repeated information. And we kind of talked about this a little bit already. Okay. So again, there might be a really cool fact or something really interesting that the passage talks about, and that's great. And that's something that you might want to tell somebody about after you've read it. However, when you're doing a summary, you don't want to use all those details because you just want to focus on the important information. Okay. So let's pull out some small details. And I kind of gave you a little hint before when we were talking. So, look over this passage again, reread, pause the video if you have to reread this to yourself. And then I want you to notice or pick out some ideas that might be just small details, ones that we wouldn't include in a summary. So go ahead, pause the video and decide what you think. All right. So let's see here. The description of the Xerxes Society, right here, Xerxes Society, an invertebrate conservation group, that's really not needed. We don't need to know who said it or what they do, okay? The important information is that the 50 kinds of butterflies are at risk, okay? And then repeated ideas. So there might be something that the author says a couple times. We don't need to include it, 2 or 3 times in our summary. We can just say it once, okay? And then the last part, using the text structure of the text. So the text is structured in a certain way. It might be description, meaning it's telling you about something, it's describing it. It might be cause and effect. It might say this happened because of these other things that happened. It might tell you something in chronological order, meaning first this happened, and then finally last this happened. Problem solution. So it might present a problem and say, oh, there's a really big issue with the butterflies because they need this certain type of plants and people are cutting them down. That's the problem. And then it might present you a solution, which is we need to protect those plants and those animals, um, to make sure that they don't die out. And then also there's compare contrast. And that's where we're finding similarities and differences between things. And it might just be two things or it might be more. So those are the basic text structures that you're going to see. So you want to use that when you're organizing your summary. And it also helps you figure out the main idea or the big idea when you're organizing your summary. Okay, so let's look at this one. What do we think the text structure of this is? We've already read this, you've reread it again. If you want to pause your video and read it a third time, I think that would be great. You can never read too many times. Okay, but think about it and then think about what you think the text structure would be. All right, so overall, this paragraph shows the text structure of cause and effect. It talks about how butterflies and caterpillars can't get what they need when plants are cut down or when their food source is destroyed. So, the cause to butterflies being at risk is that they don't have the food sources that they need. Okay? So, in your summary, you need to show that. You need to show that there's a cause and an effect here. All right. So, remember those 4 rules for writing a good summary, and you'll always be in good shape. Okay, so now it's your turn. You can go, I'll put the text back up so you can see it for a fourth time. And I want you to take some time to write your own summary. You pause the video and write your own summary. And then we're going to have a little assignment after. All right, so now that you've written your summary, I feel like you guys have a really good idea of how to write a summary. And I'm excited to practice with you now on a new passage. Okay? All right. So now we're going to move on to a new passage. And this passage is about Iceland. Now, many of you might not know what Iceland is, and that's okay because we're going to learn about it together. So right now, what we're going to do is we're going to read the passage together, and then I'm going to show you um, kind of what I want you to accomplish after this session. So after this session, you're going to have a little bit of homework, if you will. Okay, so um, it's going to be fun though. So I will show you the passage, and you should be able to print it out as well at home or pull it up on your computer so you can see it too. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you now. All right, so what you should be looking at is something that looks like this. And you can write your own title. I just called it Iceland because that's what it's about. But if you want to get creative, that would be awesome. So I'm going to read this passage to you, and I want you to follow along with me as I'm reading. And then I will tell you what the activities are that are associated with this. So let's get started reading. Iceland is known as the land of fire and ice. The fire part of fire and ice is because there is around 30 active volcanoes currently in Iceland. The ice part of fire and ice is because of the many glaciers, or slow moving chunks of ice, on Iceland. Iceland's unique features make it an amazing place to visit. The best way to see the beauty of Iceland is to hike through it. The Lavagard Trail is one of the best known trails in Iceland. People come from all over the world to hike 34 miles through the land of fire and ice to see the volcanoes and glaciers that Iceland is known for. Wow, 34 miles. I don't know if I want to go that far. It takes a lot of time and preparation to hike this trail. Most people can't hike 34 miles in one day. So before going on the hike, it is important to plan out how you're going to eat and where you're going to sleep. Most people carry the food they will eat while they hike the trail in a backpack that they will take with them. Some people also carry a tent and a sleeping bag in the same backpack so that they can camp at night. Other people pay money to stay in huts that are along the trail. What would you do? I think I'd pay for the hut. What do you guys think? It's also important to bring the right clothing for hiking. Iceland can be cold, windy, and rainy, so you need clothes that can keep you warm and dry. If you are willing to put in the planning and preparation necessary to hike this trail, you will be rewarded with unbelievable views. The trail has it all: rivers, colorful mountains, canyons, volcanoes, snow, waterfalls, hot springs, geysers, black sands, and more. Every time you turn a corner, another breathtaking view greets you. Walking through this land of fire and ice is worth all of the effort. All right, so you can go back and reread this again to yourself if you'd like. We just read it through one time, and here's an example of what you might see, a picture of what you might see while you're hiking on the trail, which is awesome. So there's two activities I want you to do when we part from each other. And the first is summarizing nonfiction, and it's a T chart that you're going to you can cut this out if you have scissors and glue. If not, you can just write it and then cross it. So, for example, most people can't hike 34 miles in one day. Decide which side it belongs on and write that sentence on the correct side. And then you can cross it off. If you don't have scissors and glue, that's okay. So, you want to decide, are these details the most important details that should be included in a summary? Or are they details that are not as important and we can kind of leave them out? So you should have 3 on each side, and some of them are less important and small details, and some of them are super important. So it's your turn to decide. And then underneath here, you're going to read the two summaries. They wrote two summaries for you. So you're going to read them and decide which summary do you think is better. And then underneath, I want you to tell me, why do you think it's better? So you don't have to write a summary this time. You're just telling me, why do you think summary 1 is better? Or why do you think summary 2 is better? So that is your task for when we get off this video. And then tomorrow I'm going to check back in with you and see what you guys decided. So I'm excited to see what work you guys got done um, on this Iceland passage. I thought it was really interesting. So I'm excited to see what you guys have to say about it. So when you exit the video, you can do a couple things. Work on that Iceland passage, and then also you can access the choice board, which I've put up there for you, and you can do one of those activities. Just pick one of those activities to do. There's a quiz up there. There's a fun activity online. There's a rags to riches game. You can get on you can get on Imagine Learning. Okay, you can spend time doing those great things, just about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll learn something new about summarizing. So I hope you all are doing awesome, and I can't wait to see you tomorrow. And we will be working some more on picking out important details and writing a summary. So I hope you are well. I hope your family's healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.